Chapter 12. Escape from Death. Darkness loomed over the secret prison of the Black Armor Legion. The cold seeped through the stone walls, and the damp air carried the stench of mildew, suffocating and oppressive. Inside the iron cell, a faint light pierced through the narrow window, casting a hazy silver shadow onto the ground. Alya sat quietly in the corner of the cell, her gaze sharp as a blade. She had read that mysterious note countless times. The handwriting was bold, yet the message was brief. The third iron gate, at the hour of moonlight. She didn't know if it was a trap, but she knew one thing. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. Time passed slowly. Outside the prison, the patrol guards made their rounds at regular intervals, their boots striking the stone floor with rhythmic clarity in the dead silence of the night. Alya held her breath, listening intently, her heart pounding in her chest, as she counted their steps. Finally, a full beam of moonlight streamed through the high iron window, illuminating the floor beside her. The time had come. Click. A nearly imperceptible sound came from the cell door. Alya's head snapped up, her sharp gaze scanning the surroundings. The chain securing the iron bars had somehow been loosened, the lock swaying slightly as if urging her to act. Without hesitation, she moved forward, pressing her fingers lightly against the door. A gentle push, and it opened. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Swiftly, she scanned the dimly lit corridor, ensuring no guards were nearby, then slipped out, keeping to the shadows as she advanced with careful, silent steps. She had to escape. The long corridor flickered with unsteady torchlight, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Alya held her breath, moving swiftly through the darkness, skillfully avoiding detection by the guards. She had studied their shift changes before, and now, every step she took was precisely calculated. The third iron gate, she murmured internally, eyes darting ahead as she mapped out her path. Just as she neared her target, heavy footsteps suddenly echoed from the side passage. Someone was approaching. Alya immediately retreated, pressing herself into the shadows. Her fingers instinctively reached for her waist, only to grasp at empty air. She had no weapon. She would have to rely solely on her wits to get through this. The footsteps drew closer. A figure emerged. A Black Armor Legion soldier stood at the end of the corridor, his dark armor glinting coldly in the firelight. He frowned slightly, scanning the area with suspicion. Alya's pulse quickened. She slowly shifted backward, her movements light as a feather, preparing to slip deeper into the darkness. "Alya." A low, commanding voice broke the silence. Alya's pupils contracted sharply. She snapped her head up, only to see the soldier stepping toward her. Beneath the armor, a pair of deep, icy eyes locked onto hers. Vivian. Alya immediately tensed, stepping back warily. Her gaze flickered with guarded hostility. "Why is it you?" she asked coldly. Vivian's expression remained unreadable, calm, detached, emotionless. She didn't answer but reached into her cloak, producing a dagger with a gleaming blade. She held it out toward Alya. "If you want to live, come with me," she murmured. Alya didn't take the weapon immediately. Instead, she stared at Vivian, eyes sharp as knives. "Why?" Vivian tilted her head slightly, her voice steady. "Do you think you have time to ask why?" Alya's fingers twitched. She didn't trust Vivian. She didn't trust anyone in the Black Armor Legion. But she knew she had no other options. She seized the dagger. The blade was ice cold, its chill seeping through her fingertips into her bones. "Let's go," Vivian said, her tone as indifferent as ever. She turned and strode forward with measured steps, as if everything had been meticulously planned in advance. Alya followed, doubt swirling in her mind. Why was Vivian here? What was her real objective? No one in the Black Armor Legion would help a prisoner without reason, especially one whose true value remained unknown. They navigated through the hidden passageways of the prison. Vivian's movements were swift and precise, her figure blending seamlessly into the shadows. Alya observed her closely, growing increasingly wary of this woman's depth and cunning. "You planned this from the start, didn't you?" Alya whispered. Vivian didn't slow down. "If you're smart, you'll focus on what you need to do right now, instead of wasting time on questions." Alya scowled. She hated Vivian's attitude, but she had to admit, the woman was right. Survival was all that mattered. Suppressing her doubts, Alya tightened her grip on the dagger and pressed forward. "The third iron gate," Vivian muttered, coming to a halt. Alya followed her gaze. A massive, heavy gate loomed in the darkness. The chains securing it had already been severed. Someone had prepared this escape route in advance. But just as they were about to step through, "Halt!" A sharp, chilling command rang out. From both sides of the corridor, Black Armor Legion soldiers surged forward, swords drawn, cutting off their escape. Alya's breath hitched. Instantly, she tightened her hold on the dagger. Vivian's expression darkened slightly. In a low voice, she murmured, "It seems we're out of time." The moment her words fell, her figure vanished in a blur. Like a ghost, she darted forward, blade flashing in the dim light. A soldier let out a strangled gasp as his throat was slit. Blood sprang into the air. Alya's gaze sharpened. She knew. The real battle had just begun. The night hung heavy over the Black Armor Legion's encampment, a suffocating air of hostility lingering in the darkness. Outside the prison, patrols had doubled, with guards stationed every few steps, their halberds glinting coldly in the dim light. Hidden sentries lurked in the shadows, ready to strike at the slightest disturbance. Alya followed Vivian through the cover of darkness, her heartbeat quickening with tension. She had escaped the prison, but this was only the beginning. The true test had just begun. "Stop." Vivian suddenly raised her hand and melted into the shadows. Alya instinctively mirrored her movements, holding her breath. 2 Black Armor Legion soldiers approached, their wary gazes sweeping the surroundings. Alya could hear the faint clinking of their armor. Controlled, disciplined, the mark of seasoned warriors. The patrol just changed shifts. Night Owl ordered heightened security, one of the soldiers muttered. "Yeah, I heard something unusual near the prison earlier." The other frowned. "You think someone could have broken in to stage a jailbreak in the Black Armor Legion's prison? Don't be ridiculous." Alya tensed. Even the slightest mistake now would spell the end of their escape. In the next instant, Vivian moved. Like a specter of the night, she slipped behind one of the soldiers, her dagger flashing as it drove silently into his throat. "Urk." The soldier's eyes widened in shock, but only a faint gurgle escaped before his body crumpled. Before the second soldier could react, Vivian was already upon him. One hand clamped over his mouth, the other plunged her dagger deep into his heart. Within seconds, both men were dead. Vivian wordlessly dragged the bodies into the shadows, her movement so swift and practiced that it sent a chill down Alya's spine. Watching the scene unfold, Alya realized something. Vivian was far deadlier than she had ever imagined. This woman was no ordinary Black Armor soldier. They pressed forward. To Alya's growing astonishment, Vivian navigated the camp with uncanny precision, avoiding patrol routes and slipping through hidden passages with ease. And then, she led them straight to a secret tunnel. Here, Vivian pushed open a worn wooden door, leading Alya down a series of narrow stone steps to a concealed passageway. Alya narrowed her eyes. "How do you know about this place?" Vivian cast her a glance, her expression unreadable. "Of course I know. Have you been here before?" Alya probed. Vivian didn't answer. Instead, she murmured, "If you have time for questions, you should be thinking about how to stay alive." Alya fell silent. She still didn't trust Vivian, but one thing was clear. This woman's background was far more complicated than she let on. Meanwhile, the Black Armor Legion's security tightened across the camp. Standing atop a watchtower, Night Owl surveyed the area with razor-sharp eyes, his dark armor blending seamlessly into the night. "Seal all exits," he ordered, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Sweep the tunnels. If you find them, kill them on sight." At his command, the camp erupted into motion. Elite soldiers spread out, locking down every possible escape route. They knew one thing. If Alya had escaped, she would only have one goal: to flee the camp. They've caught on. Vivian frowned as the glow of torches flickered in the distance. Alya saw them too, several black armor soldiers closing in fast. "Damn it," she hissed, tightening her grip on her dagger. "Prepare for combat," Vivian ordered, her voice steady, as if this was just another training exercise. The first soldier lunged. A halberd gleamed as it slashed toward Alya. She dodged, barely missing the blade, and countered with a swift slice to his wrist. Blood sprayed, but the soldier barely flinched. His armor was too thick, and he recovered instantly for another strike. Boom! Before she could be surrounded, Vivian had already dispatched 2 soldiers, her movements precise and deadly. She assessed the battlefield in a heartbeat and called out, "Use the terrain. Move left." Alya responded instantly, following her lead and weaving through the narrow corridors while striking at gaps in the soldiers' defense. Even without her necromancy, her combat instincts remained sharp. She dodged another attack and retaliated, with a lethal cut to a soldier's throat. But more were coming. Vivian's gaze darkened. This is taking too long. Without hesitation, she led Alya toward a crumbling stone wall. This way, they scaled the wall and dropped into a hidden underground passage. As the heavy stone door slid shut behind them, the soldiers' shouts were muffled, cut off from view. They had finally broken through. Alya gasped for breath, steadying herself. "Where are we?" She scanned the tunnel, its aged walls lined with cracks and moss. Vivian leaned against the wall, inspecting a shallow cut on her shoulder. "Somewhere no one will find us." Alya studied her, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Who exactly are you? How do you know about these tunnels?" Vivian didn't answer immediately. Instead, she smirked, her gaze cool and detached. "We have more important things to worry about," she murmured. "If you want to live, stop asking questions." Alya's mind whirled with doubts, but for now she had no choice but to trust her. One thing was certain: this escape was far from over. The night was deep, and the cold wind swept across the land, carrying the scent of grass and trees, along with a chilling bite. Alya and Vivian hid in a secret refuge, an abandoned underground temple. The stone walls were covered with ancient inscriptions, remnants of a long-lost language, their weathered marks whispering tales of the past. Alya leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Her chest still rose and fell rapidly from the strain of running and fighting. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her body, yet the questions in her mind only grew clearer. She could no longer hold back. Her voice was low, carrying a restrained anger. "Vivian, who exactly are you?" Her gaze locked onto Vivian, sharp and wary. "Why did you help me?" Vivian sat nearby, her expression unchanged, calm, as if everything that had just happened was nothing more than a trivial event. She casually wiped the blood off her dagger, her voice indifferent. "You don't need to know." Alya frowned, her fists clenching slightly, clearly dissatisfied with that answer. "You broke me out of the Black Armor Legion's prison, and now you're telling me I don't need to know why?" Her tone turned sharper. "You expect me to trust you, but you've never given me a single reason to." Vivian finally looked up. her deep, dark eyes meeting Alya's. There was no emotion in them, like the still surface of a lake, unfathomable and cold. Alya. She spoke her name softly, her voice steady yet carrying an undeniable weight. For some people, keeping you alive is more important than letting you die. Alya's heart sank. The words felt like both a promise and a warning, but she hated vague answers like this. Some people? Alya let out a cold laugh. Who? The Empire? The Undead Kingdom? Or some other faction I don't even know about? Vivian didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out a letter from her cloak and handed it to Alya. Alya hesitated for a moment before taking it. The envelope was unremarkable, but the paper had an unusual texture. Ancient, delicate, almost sacred. She slowly unfolded it, her eyes falling on the only line written inside. The true heir of the Undead Kingdom has yet to appear. Alya's pupils shrank slightly. She had heard this phrase before, in a conversation between Night Owl and his men. At the time, she dismissed it as just another irrelevant detail in the Empire's schemes. But now, seeing it written before her, like this, she couldn't ignore it. Her head snapped up, eyes locking onto Vivian, her confusion deepening. What does this mean? Her voice wavered slightly. The heir of the Undead Kingdom? What does that have to do with me? Vivian remained, calm, perhaps even amused. Do you really think the Empire would go to such lengths just to capture an ordinary necromancer? Her voice was soft, carrying a hint of irony. Alya, you, more than anyone, should know. Your bloodline, your power. They were never simple. Alya's breath hitched. Memories buried deep within her mind resurfaced. Her birth had always been a mystery. Her adoptive parents had never spoken of her real origins. Her abilities had always far surpassed those of ordinary necromancers. She had always believed herself to be just another pawn in the Empire's game, a piece to be moved and sacrificed at will. But now, for the first time, she felt the unsettling possibility. She might not be a mere pawn at all. She might be at the very heart of the game itself. So, she spoke slowly, her voice low. What exactly are you trying to tell me? Vivian smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in that smile. I'm telling you that your next step is to find someone, she said, her tone light but firm. He is the one who holds the true answers. Alya's gaze sharpened, more questions flooding her mind. Who? She demanded. Vivian didn't answer. Instead, she stood up, walking toward the edge of the ruined temple, staring out into the night. I've gotten you out. Her voice was soft, almost distant. The rest of the path, you'll have to choose for yourself. Alya clenched the letter in her hands, realizing that this escape was only the beginning of something much larger. Her past, her power, the hidden truths behind the Empire and the Undead Kingdom. These secrets ran deeper than she had ever imagined, and perhaps they were far more dangerous than she was prepared to face. The night was as dark as ink, yet the Black Armor Legion's camp was ablaze with light, the air thick with an oppressive tension. The sharp clang of alarm bells shattered the silence, and soldiers rushed back and forth, their black armor gleaming coldly under the firelight. A sense of impending bloodshed hung over the entire camp. In the heart of the command tent, General Night Owl stood, his expression grim. Alya had escaped, the weight of those 4 words pressed against his mind like a thorn digging into his nerves. He had been certain that the girl was completely under control, her soul power sealed, leaving her utterly powerless. And yet, she had still managed to escape. Not only had she slipped through the Legion's tightly woven net, but she had also vanished from the prison without anyone noticing. This was no ordinary feat. There was no way she had done it alone. Night Owl slowly lifted his gaze, sweeping his eyes over the gathered officers. His stare was so cold it sent a shiver through the room. Lock down the entire city. His voice was deep, laced with an unyielding authority. Deploy every scout and patrol unit. Interrogate anyone suspicious. One officer hesitated before stepping forward. General, should we also seal off the noble district? Night Owl's eyes darkened, locking onto the man for several long seconds. His voice, when he spoke, was slow and deliberate. If she has truly managed to slip into the noble district, he let out a low, chilling chuckle. Then I would very much like to see which noble dares to harbor her. Silence fell over the tent. No one dared to voice another objection. Night Owl's lips curled into a cruel smile as he issued his final order. 3 days. He let the words hang in the air before his gaze swept across the officers, each one stiff with tension. His voice was razor sharp. If she is not brought back within 3 days, you all know the consequences. The atmosphere turned frigid. Meanwhile, in a more secluded war tent, Rain sat at his desk, staring at a freshly delivered intelligence report. His fingers traced the words carefully. Alya has escaped from the Black Armor Legion's prison. Her whereabouts are unknown. Rain's expression remained composed, but a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. So, she had escaped. He wasn't surprised. From the moment he first met Alya, he knew she would never allow herself to be caged. There was something defiant in her spirit, something restless and untamed. Even in the face of certain doom, she would always search for a way out. What did surprise him, however, was that she had managed to escape the Black Armor Legions. Iron grasp, this was not mere luck. General, a voice interrupted his thoughts. His lieutenant stepped into the tent, speaking in a hushed tone. General Night Owl has ordered a full lockdown of the city. He has specifically requested that you lead the hunt. Alya must be captured within 3 days. Rain slowly lifted his gaze. 3 days? The lieutenant nodded. Yes, sir, if we fail. He didn't need to finish. Ren already understood. Night Owl's orders left no room for failure. A brief silence stretched between them before Ren finally stood, his movements unhurried. He pulled his black cloak over his shoulders, his voice calm. Prepare the horses. The lieutenant hesitated. You're going personally, sir? Ren didn't answer. Instead, he stepped out of the tent. The night wind howled around him, lifting the edges of his cloak. His eyes turned toward the vast darkness beyond the camp, toward the unknown. This mission, I will handle myself. At an abandoned ruin outside the city, Alya slowly opened her eyes. Cold sweat clung to her forehead. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sensation of something long lost awakening within her. Her soul power. The seal was weakening. She closed her eyes again, focusing on the changes in her body. That force, the undead power that had been forcibly locked away by the Empire, was stirring beneath the surface, surging with quiet intensity. Holding her breath, she attempted to summon it. At first, it felt like an invisible chain still bound, her restricting her control. But as she concentrated, pouring her will into the effort, the deathly energy within her finally responded. A wisp of black mist curled around her fingertips, faint and shadowy. Within it, the ghostly outlines of the dead flickered in and out of sight, their whispers brushing against her ears like an ancient lament. Alya's eyes snapped open, an eerie glint flashing in their depths. Her power had returned. And what did? That mean it meant she was no longer just a fugitive being hunted down. She was now something far more dangerous. Rising to her feet, she walked to the shattered window of her hideout, gazing out at the distant city, still ablaze with light. The Black Armor Legion was already moving. They would never let her go so easily. Taking a deep breath, she let the raw energy within her pulse and surge. A slow, sharp smile touched her lips. "If I am just a piece in this game," she murmured, her voice soft but steely, "then I will become the most dangerous one." Her words were quiet, yet unwavering. This hunt had only just begun.